Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got Back 4 Blood gameplay for you and my impressions of the beta. Today's video is going to be more critical because, oh boy, how do I put it? I simply did not have very much fun with Back 4 Blood. I want this game to be awesome. I was really excited and hyped about this game because I'm a huge fan of Left 4 Dead and Evolve and most of the things that Turtle Rock makes. But it just wasn't happening. No matter how hard I tried, I just kind of couldn't find myself having fun. I tried on 3 different days, 2 different difficulties, 3 different groups of people. I did PvP and PvE, but unfortunately nothing really worked for me. So that means that today's review is mostly going to be criticism. And I hope that anybody from the Turtle Rock team that watches this video takes all the things that I'm about to say as constructive and well-meaning criticism, because that's what this channel is supposed to be about. Education, criticism, build people up. And I'm also trying hard to make sure that I don't turn into one of those gamers that just becomes popular based on how much they hate various things. That's not a good way to live life. So today's video has 3 parts. Number 1 is factual basics of what Back 4 Blood is. Part 2 is what's good about it, and then the bigger part, part 3, is going to be what's bad about this game. So question number 1, what is Back 4 Blood? Back 4 Blood is a 4-player co-op campaign shooter that is extremely similar to Left 4 Dead because it is made by the same development team as Left 4 Dead and same studio, but they're no longer working under Valve. They've kind of spun off and Turtle Rock is doing their own thing these days. The game and the gameplay and the modes are about as close as they could get to Left 4 Dead without violating the copyrights. I would call this an unofficial sequel, and while I'm not particularly connected to that dev team, my understanding is that they wanted to do more Left 4 Dead. Valve couldn't count to 3, so they spun off and are kind of doing this one as an unofficial sequel. The game has 2 modes. The first mode that you're probably going to see the most of is PvE, which is basically where you pick a character, load in, and fight your way through a campaign. The map layout's going to be the same every time, but the AI will spawn different zombie hordes and bosses and hazards and different loot pools and stuff along the way, and it's roughly doing the same thing that the AI director did for, again, Left 4 Dead. There's a story as you play through, and there are some different perspectives on this because instead of having a set 4 characters, you can pick from a wider group. So as you play through with different characters, they'll have different interactions and little story moments as you move through the map. Like Left 4 Dead, there's a lot of loot, a lot of weapons, a lot of different pickups and upgrades and stuff that'll help you get through this, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The second mode that you're going to get to play is PvP, player versus player, and this one's kind of unusual. It's almost like a mix-up of Apex Arenas and then old school Left 4 Dead PvP. So if you remember in old school Left 4 Dead PvP, you would play the same campaign map again, except humans would take over the special zombies like the tank and the liquor and stuff like that and try to mess you up. For PvP, you're going to load into a small, and I mean a super small little arena-sized section of the campaign map that you are boxed in, and there's like a ring of gas around it, like a mini battle royale, and that will slowly squeeze in and kind of force you through the middle as you fight to survive wave after wave of enemies and other players playing as the special ridden or special infected zombies. PvP has a looting phase where the defending team gets to get all their gear and kind of get set up. Then it has a survival phase where they have to hold out against the zombie hordes as long as possible, either surviving the entire time, dying, or make it to a certain time. Then you'll change sides and you will get a chance to play as the special ridden zombies, and you're going to want to kill the enemies faster than they killed you, or just maybe kill them in general if they if your team survived. What's a little weird about this is that the ridden zombies can spawn anywhere that's out of sight, and that made a lot more sense in the Left 4 Dead campaign. You would pick like critical choke points and put them at certain places that the players would have to walk through, but in a roughly square arena, it's kind of weird how they spawn in. Just so long as you can't actually see them, they'll just pop right in. You do a round-based thing for best 2 out of 3, and then for both of these game modes, there is a whole looting and progression system that is incredibly complicated. You'll get, well, I'll call them permanent coins to unlock upgrades and cards and stuff like that between games. You'll get coins to be spent in the run-through itself, like a currency as you go through the campaign to get, you know, little temporary upgrades. And you can also, of course, scavenge big upgrades. You can scavenge weapons and parts and stuff throughout the game. And it really reminds me of Hades in the way that, like, for Hades, you would play and you would have big power-ups that you would do once you died and came back. And then you would have smaller ones that you pick up throughout the level. And you could even get power-ups, big power-ups to make your small power-ups better. So it's very Hades-like, and it's very grindy in that kind of way. So that's all the big mechanics. Let's talk about what Back 4 Blood does well. The first thing I think it does very well is it has a good movement system. It's almost like parkour zombies. I know there's another game that does that, but I'm comparing to Left 4 Dead here. Compared to that game, you can climb almost everything. You can mantle, you can jump, you can do, I think, a little slide. There's just a ton of mobility that you can do. So if you're fast on your feet and you like to climb, there's some really creative ways that you can move through maps and get elevations over zombies. You can kind of parkour your way around like Modern Warfare 2019. The climbing and moving element of it is all pretty smooth and fluid and works, and it feels good because in real life, if you're getting chased by zombies, you're going to be moving and scooting, and if they surround you in a corner with a box, well, the first thing you're going to do is jump up on the box, and you can do that now. This part of the gameplay is a significant improvement over Left 4 Dead. The second thing is that I think the gunplay is better for Left 4 Dead, or at least more complex. It's more COD style now. You can aim down sights, you can put different optical attachments on, extended mag, suppressor, compensator. The gunplay is a little bit faster than what you would have seen in Left 4 Dead and other zombie games kind of like this one. I think the goal was to, again, make it somewhat more realistic and more COD-like and more fluid than the old Left 4 Dead. It's hardly perfect. We'll talk about some of the gun flaws later, but overall the gunplay was nice. The third thing I think the game does well is that it does give you a lot of different viable play styles for whatever playthrough you want to go to. If you want to be a healer, if you want to be a DPS, if you want to be the team tank, if you want to provide utility, there are tons of combos for these, not only with the characters and the weapons, but all of the unlocks that modify the weapons and all of the skills and cards and unusual abilities and little things that you can pick up. And I think that this adds a really high degree of replayability, which is good for harder difficulties. Like on easy mode you can blow through, but on harder you're going to need to kind of come up with a plan. This gives you a lot of opportunities to kind of game the system and come up with unusual plans. And that's a rare compliment for me for this kind of game. Rare will I say that having more classes is usually better. In most cases it's worse. The fourth thing that I like is that there are two good artistic aesthetic decisions. The first is a little, I guess we'll say A, is that I appreciate some of the bigger set pieces in game. There's a big boat that you can blow up. There's a cannon you can shoot in the mine shaft. There's some really big things in the game. Big enemies as well, we'll talk about briefly. But there's some pretty epic kind of moments that I appreciate. And I also appreciate the hilarious amount of blood on your character. The game is called Back 4 Blood. As you move through the map and kill zombies one after another, you get a pretty realistic amount of blood and guts on you if you were really killing that many people. Your gun gets completely covered in mud and water and gore, and all your characters are just completely blood red. It kind of reminds me of the ending of the Peter Jackson movie Dead Alive, or maybe Rikio, or maybe even the new Evil Dead movie where it starts raining blood on the girl at the end and she spends like the last 20 minutes of the movie just blood red. That's kind of fun. It gets a little repetitive, but at least the first couple times it's fun. And then number 5, one thing I like is that there are gigantic boss fights, and I mean huge building-sized bosses that you get to fight, and I find that aspect of this to be very fun. And honestly, the big bosses I think are kind of better designed and work better than some of the little ones, which is a little bit weird. I think they're kind of pulling on some of the evolved stuff here, but I found the big boss to be the most interesting one. So that's all the stuff I liked. Now we're moving into the spicy section. What does Back 4 Blood do poorly? Why does Drifter not like this game? Why did he have such a bad time? And that's going to be the meat of today's video. The first thing I didn't like is that the connection quality was poor. And I can already hear you typing in the comments, bro, it's a beta, but it's a beta. It's hype. The servers are overloaded. I know. I get that. I'm totally aware. I tried to play this game over a couple of different days. I tried it at different times, morning, day, night, whatever, different groups of people. And every time it was pretty laggy. It was pretty rough. Most of the gameplay you're seeing here is the better looking aspects of it because I don't want to like put, bad stuff out on the internet. But it never quite worked right, and because of this, my teammates would kind of teleport and zip around, and doors would open and close quickly. Fire would load in sometimes after it exploded, and I didn't know what happened. I would stutter step, and there's just a lot of wonky behavior with items and doors and checkpoints, but the biggest issue that this caused is that the zombies are less satisfying to kill, not only because the zombies will teleport and like warp and glitch around and do really weird things when the server lags, but when you kill them, oddly the gore effects and everything that they're doing lags as well. So it makes your violent, gory, crazy, like machete kills and stuff like that less satisfying when you hit them and it loads half the blood and then disappears, or you hit them and nothing happens and then they die later. It kind of just takes you out of the combat loop really bad, and that's something that I didn't enjoy. I do assume that's going to be fixed in the final game though. Number two is that I think that the stamina for player movement is way too low. Most of my deaths are from running out of stamina in this game. You have a very, very limited amount of sprint time and melee time, and you're going to burn through this really quickly if you try to run through the map or move fast or kill a whole bunch of zombies with melee weapons. You're going to find yourself constantly fatigued, like you're encumbered in Skyrim. The most useful card, the most useful upgrade that I've got throughout the entire game is one that lets me slowly upgrade my stamina as I move along the map. And like in the last couple of levels, it was finally getting to a more acceptable amount where I had plenty of ability to move around and maneuver the way I wanted to. But for most of the map, I was really slow. And I think that the idea that developers had here is they didn't want people to sprint through the maps, and they didn't want the movement to be unlimited, so you can add like a sort of gameplay balancing lever here by limiting movement, and you can also add another lever for perhaps ratcheting up emotions or tension or whatever, and forcing harder decision making. But the reality is it just has the opposite effect, and instead of like cranking your emotions up and making the game go faster and getting higher highs, it slows everything down, makes you play more conservatively, and kind of takes you out of the game and makes you want to metagame a little bit. So I didn't have a lot of fun with the way they built the stamina system. My third criticism I think is going to be my meanest of the day, and that's that these special ridden characters are less unique and interesting than their Left 4 Dead counterparts. So I haven't played Left 4 Dead in like 5 or 6 years now, but I still remember the tank, the witch, the boomer, the spitter, the jumper, I think it was, the guy in a hoodie that lands on people. And I remember what they do, how they look. I can spot their outline at a distance. And they kind of tried to bring the same thing back here. There's a character that's a boomer and a charger, and then there's like Spider-Man who sits on the walls and kind of hits you like a licker. And they do similar things, but for whatever reason, they just don't quite have that same sort of personality. I'm sure that like the devs will tell me I'm wrong. They all do objectively have different outlines and different abilities, and they look different. But in the middle of the game, they don't look different enough for me to care. I just shoot them all kind of the same for the most part. And for the most part, the way that they come and attack me is they just come straight in and go for like a bind or disable. And 3 or 4 of them do a very similar kind of bind and disable. And also as characters, they don't quite have the same personality. Like the witch was very sad. That was very distinct. Then you had a guy in a hoodie. You had a super aggressive tank. The AI for these is all kind of the same, so they don't behave a lot differently, except for the spitter at distances. I mean, that's kind of a sniper, so that's what it's going to do. And each one of these special ridden does have a weak spot that you can shoot for critical hits, that you can kill it faster. And the other regions on it are relatively tanky, so they'll bullet sponge you. And the way this works in game is that you're supposed to be able to identify the special ridden, shoot the weak spot, disable them, efficiently and keep moving. But with the pace of the game and being swarmed by zombies and how the weak spots look almost the same as regular, and they're not like insanely intuitive, like one guy's weak spot is his double chin and the other guy's weak spot is the chest for no particular reason that stands out, you usually just end up shooting them a ton, and if you hit the spot and kill them, great. If not, you just bullet sponge them to death. And I didn't find a lot of really special ways to deal with them other than to hose them down, so it kind of made it less fun to play against the special ridden. I really wasn't feeling anything about them. Number 4 in the criticism list is that ammo and supplies are critically short. You have small mags and small bags. Most of the weapons in this game by default have like a 15-20 round magazine, so you're constantly reloading them. Now, I get that that's as a balancing lever because you'll get extended mags later, but even the extended mags sometimes only take them up to 25 or 30 rounds, so that can still be pretty rough, and a balancing lever because you'll have faster reloading with the cards. At default, you only have 1 heal per person and 1 grenade, maybe 1 little special thing as well. And I do understand that over time, what you're supposed to do is collect cards and level up and build a deck so that you have more things and more options, and that in a survival game, you're supposed to conserve your ammo somewhat. But what I mostly felt was that I was just out of everything. Out of bullets, out of heals. I used my 1 grenade. I didn't have the cards. I didn't pick the right thing. I didn't level up high enough. I didn't grind through the campaign 3 times so that the next time I go through I can have 3 grenades. It sort of slowed everything down and made it a lot less fun. Speaking of fun, the difficulty levels were not fun. Survivor mode is painfully easy. That's most of the gameplay you're seeing here. You just play on the basic difficulty. It is ridiculously easy. You take very little damage. You just walk through the map. And matter of fact, in our playthrough, J-Hub, for the most part, would just like walk to the end of the map by himself alone. And it only messed us up like once or twice. And it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna get bashed on YouTube if I only play one difficulty and say it's easy. I should pick this up one step. I should play veteran, which the primary damage or the primary difficulty increase here is that it turns team damage on. And in a game like this with zombies everywhere and explosives and stuff, that can be really, really, really brutal. It of course does make the enemies a little tougher and a little less loot along the way, so you've got other difficulties as well. But the big problem is that I just ended up shooting my teammates all the time in hectic fights or setting each other on fire or something. And I was playing this particular playthrough with a team of 3 and a bot. I had a late joiner and I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna get like a Randy in here, we'll carry him to a victory. The guy immediately realized we were playing on veteran difficulty and killed every single one of us right at the time we were getting to the safe room and just ruined the entire run. Couldn't even kick him out, just had to kind of deal with that. So that wasn't fun at all, and I find that the difficulty levels are either boring or like insanely hard with nothing in the middle that feels particularly hype. Number 6 in the criticism list is that I ran into issues with things on the map not being labeled properly or having waypoints. I killed myself a couple of times trying to walk to the next area because the rules or boundaries weren't particularly clear, or in one instance I was supposed to break these like pustules by a farm to go across the bridge, and we looked all over and we couldn't find the pustules, and I'm like, maybe the pustules are down here below the bridge. It's like a 2-foot drop, and I went down there and died instantly, but then when I was being respawned, it respawned me on the other side of the checkpoint that my teammates couldn't figure out how to get past, and we spent like 20 minutes bumbling around the farm trying to find pustules to break, and we couldn't figure out where they were. We didn't get in-game hints, we didn't have waypoints, and we found 3 tiny little pulsing things in a big pile of tentacles next to a bridge that looked just like the rest of the art. They shot it, popped it, and that triggered an animation. You know, we got to keep going and respawn, but it was like 30 minutes of general confusion and kind of not knowing what to do on a whole team of gamers that do nothing but play games all day. You'd think they'd be able to figure it out faster. And then my last criticism today. Number 7, I don't think PvP was very fun for me because the special ridden were not empowering. Their moves that they had available were mostly slower and clunkier ones that required a wind-up, and those kind of moves can work okay if you're doing a campaign playthrough, like comparing to Left 4 Dead, because you'll spawn ahead of the enemies at a choke point, and even if you have a wind-up or a thing, you know where you can ambush them, where you can come in from, and where you can kind of disrupt them. But this is a small and relatively square map, and you have to spawn somewhere that they're not looking, and good teams are going to kind of clump together and they're going to look around in a bunch of different directions and just make it where your spawn points are pretty limited. Then you'll spawn in 20 feet away, and all of your... they'll be like behind cover or on a building or a box or something, and your moves will be, okay, the slow wind up and then you shoot, or a slow wind up and then you charge, or a slow wind up and then you grab. And even the mobility, like the jumpy one, had a little bit of a wind-up, so for the most part, I would just get completely blasted while trying to do my moves against people. It wasn't, like, super fun for me, and then comparatively, like, on the ridden side, you could kind of spawn in areas that humans couldn't really even, like, shoot you back, so some of the long-range characters you could just take pot shots at people with all game and be annoying. And yeah, it's like a play style, and you can win like that, but it's not fun or engaging. So I just generally didn't like PvP. It was really weird having it be a mini battle royale type situation instead of a campaign playthrough. And the sad thing about it is that one of the hype things about Left 4 Dead is that when you get to play as the special zombies, you feel empowered. Dude, you're a tank, you're a jumper, you're a licker, you can do all this like really cool stuff. But in this one, I felt actually weaker than the survivors by a significant amount, and I didn't feel fast or empowered or anything. I felt like I was fodder, and that's not very fun. So at the end of the day, I did not have a good time with Back 4 Blood. I am sorry, guys. This video is more negative than I wanted it to be. I was hyped for this game. I know a few people on the team for Back 4 Blood. They gave me a code. I was excited to play. I just didn't have a good time. Because of all the downsides I listed, they just bogged me down and made it hard to overlook and enjoy the good things. If I could give any advice on how to improve this game before launch, I would say that the makers should focus on 3 main goals. Number 1 is to make the game smoother, primarily through fixing the netcode and lag, and maybe a little bit of work on the animations on the zombies and how they handle the lag. Number 2 is to make the game faster by improving the stamina situation and being more generous with things like ammunition and other stuff so that you can run and gun and survive instead of counting your bullets because you don't know if you're going to completely run out of your ammo at some point in the playthrough because there's just not any. And then number 3, I think that the special ridden need more personality. And I don't mean personality as in like edginess or different moves, but I feel like they oddly need to be more humanized somewhat. Like each one of the Left 4 Dead special characters had a little personality. You could see like little aspects of their former human selves like bleeding into the zombies. The witch is sad because she's self-aware. The tank is made of rage. You know, the jumper, whatever, is like a really buff dude in a jumpsuit. He just kind of got jumped at the gym and something bad happened to him. These guys are just like weird, grotesque monsters, and they're not really distinct or interesting in that way. So I think that giving them slightly more human personalities and maybe more engaging movesets would really, really make this game a lot better, especially in PvP. That is my opinion for Back 4 Blood. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful about this game, and I hope that when it does come out in a couple of months that I can completely and totally eat my words on this and that all this stuff is polished and fixed and that it's awesome. Because while I criticize games and while I say things on this channel that might be mean or negative, my overall goal is to help make a game better, make the gaming community better, and the more good games there are, the better it is for all us gamers out there. So again, if you enjoyed, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.